So we have about one more minute, Chris, before we're actually live.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Hey, Ghosts of Bacon here, going live, first time ever. And in the waiting room is Chris Dona, my good friend, colleague, and fellow Oak Island researcher and theorist. Tonight, what I really wanted to do was we're not going to be, like I kind of said with the promo video I did, we're not going to be doing, presentations. We're not going to be doing, the whole kind of dog and pony show. What we're really going to be doing is just visiting and talking about what really got Chris involved in Oak Island research, what his experiences have been, and giving us some, maybe some information from some of the early researchers that he's been in contact with, stuff like that. Some of his previous theories that he has presented in Oak Island. He's done several presentations in the war room. And so this guy is a veteran. He's a wealth of knowledge about the island itself and what's been going on in Oak Island over the years and all the other theories associated with it. And, I see Judy is popping in. Here's Tom Burns. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us. Sunny New Brunswick. It's sunny out there. Good to hear it, Tom. So let me bring in Chris, and we're going to get things rolling here right off the bat, gang. So, hey, Chris.
Hey,
thanks for joining me, my friend. I appreciate you very much. I can't imagine doing my maiden voyage here as a podcaster with anyone other than you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, you're the one that sucked me into this whole thing, so.
I did.
When the guys asked us in the war room what got me started, I said, I blame Chris Dona, which elicited a bit of a chuckle from everybody. But so what I would really like you to do, Chris, just to start it off, there are a lot of people out there that, you've been on the show, you've done multiple war room presentations. If you would just go ahead and introduce yourself, tell the listeners and viewers your background, what got you interested in all this in the first place. Putting you on the spot.
Well, I'm a colleague of Jake's at Potsdam Central, and we both teach. And what got me into Oak Island, I think it was actually the old In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. I thought he had an Oak Island topic one time or something like that. And also it was a search on the internet about the money pit, and it showed the pirates standing over the money pit, and it's like a 200-year unsolved mystery, and there's a big flood tunnels, and so it captured my interest. So then I did a search for it online in Google, and or whatever the search engine was back in like 2002. I don't think Google is around, but whatever it was. And Joe's forum popped up. It was called Oak Island Treasure. And
for the listeners, Joe who was Joe
Atherton.
Yeah.
And she was the moderator, and it was before Facebook and all the that type of social media, but it was just a forum, and it had topics, and it had a wide range of different areas to go to learn. So really the first, I would say, several years was just listening to all the other Oak Island theorists and researchers and learning about it from them. So like you know, I can think of Danny Henniger, who lives right in Chester. He was the president of the Oak Island Tourism Society at the time. He
Oh
was
wow.
really very knowledgeable and helped out a lot of people in the forum, especially new people in the forum that had basic questions, just like a lot of the people on here do, that they need to know. Paul Ronkowski, very
I was
knowledgeable. He was
going
the
to ask
lead.
you about him in a little bit here. So yeah, I really
Yeah,
want to
he
call.
was really the leading researcher on Oak Island at the time, and he kind of mentored me. We did a lot of historical research about the lots and stuff early on. Like Cal Hancock too. He was there, and he's still involved in the history of the island, and he's been on the show. But it's a lot of those guys that would just have a topic like Nolan's Cross on it. It would have like 50 comments of people just going back and forth, sharing ideas. What do you think it is? And all the different facts about it, facts about Fred Nolan and what he did and when he found it. All this knowledge was at
Wow.
your fingertips. And the thing is, the forum isn't officially still open, but you can go back and see all the old comments. It's still up on
Oh
the
wow.
internet.
That's
So
cool.
all that information is right there, and I think I've posted in it in a couple groups, but it's a wealth of knowledge, really.
Well,
So
that's just it. I mean, that's why you are, is because you
yeah,
were there. You were there at the beginning, really,
yeah,
and this is why I was really excited about doing this tonight, because I really want people to know, um, you know, how long you've been doing this, what you really bring to the table here in terms of Oak Island research, and all of the multiple connections that you've made over the years, with other researchers and
hmm
the other presentations you've done. Um, so before you got into Oak Island, though, what were you researching? Yeah, because I think we all have sort of all of the Oak Island theorists, as we call ourselves, I guess.
hmm
Um, we all have sort of an interest, right,
yeah,
into things that are associated with Oak Island. Um, and so, I mean, you have such a huge background in astronomy, and I know that you did a lot of research in serpent mounds and those
yeah,
kinds of.
yeah.
What were you really into before you got into Oak Island, and then how did that lead to Oak Island, I guess is my question.
Well, I think the astronomy part has always been an interest of mine. So naturally, when Oak Island came up, I would try to apply that to the island. Find out if there is something to it. It was very difficult at first because all the software really wasn't out. As time progressed, the astronomy software improved, and but back in like 2007, I think Stellarium was up, but it was like very basic. But yeah, so I think astronomy really is the aspect that I apply to the island more than any other. But
Yeah.
I've always been interested in uh, the unsolved mysteries of the world, and I watch Ancient Aliens just to see all the different places and different interesting locations all over the world that have mysteries attached to them. I did get Serpent Mound. Yeah, I did a lot of work on Serpent Mound, and I think I found some new answers to that. But yeah, it's just always trying to look at things that are unsolved and trying to apply astronomy to them, or any of my knowledge that I have to that problem, to see if I can come up with an answer.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think that's why you and I, I mean, have hit it off over the years, just simply because we're both interested in a lot of the same
hmm
things. The idea of the history of prehistory is something that uh,
Yeah,
I'm really fascinated with. The idea that all of our technological advances have only happened over the last 120 years, when we've actually been fully evolved humans for
exactly.
hundreds of thousands of years. And so that 120 years is just a little blip. So what happened, during the ice age? How advanced were we then? And then when the ice caps melted and caused a flood, what did that flood wipe out? Those kinds of things. Something that's always fascinated me. That's just really cool that you have that same sort of drive and idea of you know what came before.
And I think a lot of it, I mean, in school with the early explorers, I know you grew up in New York State too, and you got a rich history of that. I think, what was it, like sixth grade or
Oh
whatever
yeah.
it is. Those early explorers, it really doesn't dawn on you, but this is what we're really talking about with Oak Island is, who came to America first?
Oh yeah.
Who who was there? I mean, did the Phoenicians come over? BC? They talk about the copper
Oh yeah.
mine up in Michigan.
Michigan.
Vikings. It's really interesting to find out if some of that historical information that we learned in school, is it real or is there a lot more to it?
Well, I think my opinion on that, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I was really fortunate, especially when I was in elementary school. I had some, really, uh, I guess you would call it, critical thinking teachers who
Mhm.
kind of inspired that kind of questioning, that kind of idea of, well, hey, listen, there's tons of evidence that the Vikings were here first, and here's why. Really shared a lot of that cool information with us. So, yeah, I again, we are on the same brainwave when it comes to all that stuff for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, when you were one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and you already brought this up, which is really cool, is the early years of your Oak Island research. Back in the days before Facebook, and everyone was
Mhm.
like doing research on forums and those kinds of things. You have any like stories from the early days in terms of some of the people that I mean, you mentioned a couple of names.
Mhm.
Any specific stories kind of like, really pop out at you that you remember that you'd like to share? Anything like that?
Well, I can talk about my first time being on the island. That was interesting.
That would be amazing. Please go ahead.
It was back in 2006, and they had something called the Oak Island Days back then. And the Oak Island Tourism Society isn't what it is today. It's much more evolved than it was. But they used to have members. You could be a member for $10, and you got a card. And I was a member, so
That's cool.
my wife and I went up to Nova Scotia to visit, and we stayed at the hotel there at the Oak Island. Um, what is it called now? It's called. It's not the Oak Island Resort, but I can't remember the name of it. But it was. I think it was called the Oak Island Resort back then. And we got to. I met Danny Haniger and all the people in the forum that were there. Scott Clark. You guys know who Scott Clark is. He used to go up to those days too. I met Scott, and what was I going to say? And Danny Henniger approached me, and he goes, "Well, we're looking for guys to go up on the island and just like prepare the island." I said, "Sure." So a bunch of us jumped in. I was mowing grass up by the money pit before the Oak Island days,
Oh
but we
wow.
had to do some work in there. I volunteered. I said, "Sure." So it was kind of cool to go up there with nobody up there. It was kind of neat to see everything, and we got a tour from Paul. He showed us around a little bit, and we walked around after we got done our work. So that was neat, a little private tour. And Paul and I had been working together before that. So he was kind of showing me the spots that he had been talking about with the rocks. And Paul was actually interested in astronomy too, a little bit. So we had a lot of great conversations, and he kind of showed me where his locations were, because he had pretty much access to the island with Dan. So Dan would had a lot of respect for Paul. I think they had a falling out at the end, but I don't know what that was over. But
Sure.
yeah, he would work for Paul, work for Dan, and witness a lot of his documents. So
Wow.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
I want to get into who Paul really was, and
Mhm.
kind of like his story that you've shared with me, at least pieces and
Yeah.
bits and parts. Um, but before I do, let's see. Michael Heron is dropped a couple of messages. Couldn't find a live broadcast on Facebook Live. Yeah, sorry about that, Michael. It's actually in my group Ghosts of Bacon. And to join, all you have to do is request to join, and you can get in there. I'm glad you found us here on YouTube. That's awesome. Michael's second question is actually really good. Chris, I definitely want to hear your take. I'll give it my answer first, but I think I already know what yours is. Has Graham Hancock's work, America Before, et cetera, influenced your thought process about your theories? Um, in my estimation, yes. I mean, for me, Michael, he is. I've read all of his books. You might be able to see a couple of them here on the shelf behind me. I'm a big fan of his work. I don't agree with everything that he puts out there necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I really love his work. I love his lateral thinking. I love the way that he approaches the idea of history. I love his work that a lot of his presentations that he's done with Randall Carlson in particular. I'm a huge fan of Randall Carlson. He's both of those gentlemen have been on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they've done a couple of interviews with him. And every time they get together and present information, it's usually pretty mind blowing. So yeah, I'm pretty. He has definitely shaped how I view history, I think. Chris, go ahead. Graham Hancock.
No, I know he's done some work on talking about the Serpent Mound in this book too. So I don't agree with the final conclusion, because there is a constellation that is, they think, supposedly represents the Serpent Mound, but they think it's Draco, but it's not. So I'm trying to change some minds.
I agree with you on that one, but go ahead and explain.
Yeah, it's hard to change minds of a lot of those researchers that spent a lifetime researching the Serpent Mound to really change their mind to a different serpent constellation. But I've tried to show that, but it's like when some of these researchers put so much effort in their own angle or their own result or their own what they find, their findings, it's hard for them to change, because if you write a book about it, you write a book about it and it's like you're pretty much stuck almost.
When you think you have that amount of time and effort and a vested interest in your own conclusions, that creates a very specific cognitive bias, for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's Ross Hamilton's another one, and he's put so much claim into the constellation Draco for Serpent Mound that it's even though you might see what my research and say, oh yeah, that looks good, but I'm on Draco. Sorry.
I already picked Draco.
Yeah. I think I can relate that to Oak Island too. Some theorists are really pretty stuck on one thing, even though maybe there's something better out there, but it's kind of where they are.
Well, that's where I was going next is we see that in our own experiences in terms of Oak Island theorists. I mean, we're in contact with each other. We share ideas. You and I and Aaron specifically, and of course Chris Morford, Corey Mull, have their take on it as well. And I have a great deal of respect for the work that everyone does, and yet when we actually throw our ideas out there, none of them are mutually exclusive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that happens with the show, The Curse of Oak Island, is that people throw their eggs in a basket in terms of, this is the theory that I'm really a fan of. Oh, I'm all Knights Templar. It's all Templar, or it's Rosicrucians. It's Francis Bacon, which is the camp obviously that you and I are in. But the thing is that I don't see those. I see it as being a linked train of knowledge that's associated with this place. There's something very special about this place that that over the years different groups who have passed knowledge one on to the next, that they continue to go back and use this location.
Well, I think New Ross is also part of that.
Yeah.
People don't realize. I've always been a proponent of New Ross being part of the Oak Island mystery because of some, aspects of the astronomy and this location, but it's also some, history conjecture about who used it back in, the 1600s. So, but I think it's such an interesting area because you look at old maps like Jake that you found. I mean, it's kind of avoided. The whole area is just devoid of showing the area really realistically and accurately. So
Absolutely.
I think it's old. I think it was discovered way back and it was used for something, and it was a secret going on up through.
Yeah, agree 100%. And I think it's been used and reused over and over again by depositors and searchers
Smuggling.
for smuggling, privateering, piracy. Yeah. I think that there was some mining and counterfeiting going on along with that, based upon my most recent research, which is a couple of things I just kind of tied out in the cipher world came about this morning, and I'll share that with you later through a private message. I think you're going to think it's cool.
Well,
so one of the things I wanted to ask you was your very first, because a lot of people don't realize how many war room presentations you've done.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few.
It's one of the things that has come up in a lot of the podcasts. When theorists are kind of talking about their experiences, and they give a really long presentation, and 15 seconds or 5 minutes of it shows up on the show itself.
Yeah.
And I know your experience where you have presented for hours. Yes. And then a snippet shows up. What was it? Was it season 6 when you did the Royal Arch?
Yeah, that was the Virgo and the Royal Arch, and
yeah. It's just such a cool theory too. And again, you did presentations before that. You've done multiple presentations since then. Couple of questions. Your very first War Room presentation, what was it on? What was your theory? And the second question is, how many times have you presented to the War Room? Well, so I don't think that even your friends on Facebook that are members of your groups know any of this about you. And I think it's important for them to know.
The first time was 2016, and I can't remember. Well, that would have been like season 3, maybe something like that. I sent a proposal to Rick. I got his email from David Blankenship on Facebook, and I sent him some research that I had found, and they liked it. And it was my presentation was called the Rosicrucian Garden of Eden. So cool. that was the name of my presentation back then. It was very, very long. I mean, I'm talking like it was like 8 hours long. Only because I presented in the old War Room there. Okay. And I was there for 3 days. And the old War Room, it was like 90 degrees that day, believe it or not. It was like so hot. They had an air conditioner on in there, but it could only run when the camera had stopped. They had to turn it off. And at that time, they were putting all the stone at the money pit. They're laying that bed of stone. It's okay. That bed of stone that they use for it's pretty big. It's just, the size of a football field there.
Right, right.
Trucks like every 15 minutes were rumbling by the War Room. Then he said, like John Levy would say, "Whoa, hang on a second. Got a truck coming through." So then we had to sit, let it go through, then start back up again.
That's so
but it took so long. Poor Randall Sullivan was in the other trailer. He was in the trailer waiting because I think he was supposed to present, but mine took so
Right.
long that he never got to present that day. But he was like waiting in the waiting room for me to get done. And
Oh, that's brutal.
yeah, Randall Sullivan was there. And then they really enjoyed it. I think it was quite different than the other presentations. I think the astronomy angle is something that they really like.
Oh yeah.
It's just that sometimes it could be confusing because they're not amateurs astronomers. They don't.
Right.
They don't know what I'm trying to say unless I really explain it basically, and that takes a long time. There's usually a lot of information that you have to front load. As you know, I mean, think about the Shakespeare plaque stuff. I mean, it takes a half an hour just trying to explain the the preemptive stuff so they understand the stuff that you're trying to say.
Exactly. And then, I was going to get into that here in a little bit too, in terms of when you consider the intricacy of and the amount of details that your theories have when it comes to, the astronomical alignments alone. Yes. And the numbers, and then you have to get into the numerology in cipher systems, and what a cipher signature is, for example.
Yeah,
you have to front load all of that, and I think that that's a big thing that kind of when we presented this last fall, looking at it now and seeing how the sequence has kind of come out. People have asked me, well, what about you and Chris? And I said, well, we didn't really present until September. Yeah. And I'm thinking that by then they already had, their episodes, kind of planned out, and I think our big debut this season was when our names were on the board of the producer and
that last
place digging down.
They're digging down to show us like Chris and Jake Roberts and Shakespeare's plaque, and then
right. So us. And so right there on the screen, one of the things I want to put up here is Tom Burns. He says the secret lies in the who and the how the information got passed down. Yeah, Tom. Again, it's like whenever we have a podcast or you go to John Stemmer's podcast, or Tom shows up at Jeff Freeman's podcast and just asks really great questions, gives awesome input. Once again, yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head there. Another cool comment we have is Michael Heron. They should do episodes or an entire spin-off show dedicated to your theories.
Yeah, I agree with that. They should do that.
I think we all agree with that, Michael. In fact, Jeff Freeman on his podcast on Beyond Oak Island and Beyond, he had requested questions from the members, and I actually sent that question to Maddie Blake, and Maddie Blake answered it live, and then basically said that that's something that he's definitely going to be passing up, that he would really like to have a digging down where a lot of the theorists what we do is we just go on and explain our theories in detail, which would be kind of cool. I think that the fans love it, and it's something that we like to do, is explain our ideas in more detail, and so that would be a lot of fun to do, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But I think I presented like 5 or 6 times in the war room, and the last time was in the new war room, which was much nicer. It's around the corner there. It's got AC, and it was like boom, boom. It's nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty much all of my presentations that I do are pretty much astronomy is part of it. I mean, that's my niche. And, I presented with Chris and Corian too. And did astronomy.
Well, you were a part of the presentation that was aired this past season.
Right. But they didn't show
they didn't show your part, but there were 2 different episodes that you were actually a part of, their theory, where you supplied the astronomical information.
Yes. And I wish they would have shown that because it was pretty cool. And, but it's you know, even in their theory, all they did is show their line from
Yeah.
Versailles to the island, and it's like there was
There's a
so
lot more
much
to it than that.
more of
Yeah.
that they could have. I don't know. It's just it's kind
Well,
of
see, that's just
frustrating.
it is because I mean, you and I know a lot of what else is behind the scenes of that whole theory.
Yeah.
Just because we know those two, and you were a big part, you were a major part of that whole theory, and
Yes.
so I know you're part of it. And I don't know. I think the fans really, really love that stuff, and that's what they really want to see.
Hmm.
Um, and how much of that do you think is, on the part? And I'm not, casting aspersions at Prometheus or anything like that. Those guys are so good at telling a story, and so good at showing what does happen there on the island. And I mean, Maddie Blake just did an awesome job with us digging down that last episode of showing
That's cool, and that's
what
exactly
goes on
how
in the
it is
scenes.
there too. I mean, you got to get fitted with a mic, and they come up to you, and it's exactly how Jack is. That's what they had to do to me.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, it's busy. I mean, it's 8 in the morning till dark.
Well, yeah, yeah,
That's a
and
busy
so, but do you think that there's sort of this mindset where that if some of the assistant producers don't really understand our theories or all of the details of it, that they're worried that the viewers at home won't get it either?
Uh,
You think that's
that
you think
I
that's part
think
of it?
that's it. I think that's it, and it's so limited because they want you to limit your presentation to an hour and a half. I mean, like I said, if you take up, half of that just trying to teach them, astronomy 101, and then you talk about your theory, it's kind of like, there's just never enough time, really. There's
Yeah.
never enough time. And as you know, I think Jake, I think you experienced it the last summer with me. It's just you got to you got to cut. It's like cutting your presentation down like the night before. It's like, oh, I'm just cutting all this good information out. It's like
Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal. Well, what about, the fact that you and I both gave, what would have been a 3-hour presentation each, and we were
yes,
both able to fit it in an hour.
hour, yeah,
There were a lot of
yeah,
things we left out for
an
sure.
hour
Yeah.
apiece.
Oh, this is a
Yeah,
cool
and it's
question.
yeah, definitely. It's does that say do the start?
Uh, Michael Heron, do star constellations or astronomy play big roles in all secret fraternal orders, or are they exclusive to a specific few?
I would say many do. I mean, the
Yeah.
Pleiades has always a major role in all these societies.
Mhm.
They've all had stars or like Venus, the planet
Yeah.
Venus was important to them. But
The pole
the
star.
thing is
Yeah.
that really during all this Age of Enlightenment time was that they really only had Ptolemy's 48 constellations and his star catalog to go by for 1500 years until like
Wow.
15 1600s when all these astronomers were just throwing all these special constellations up there that I think what I figured out is just like they're secret constellations though. They all have double meanings and they're placed in a certain way with another constellation and they're pointing at something else. And so yeah, so I think the secret organizations definitely during the Age of Enlightenment, the Rosicrucian, the Freemasons, all these different secret groups were all had constellations or stars or planets that were important to them.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes along with, well, it goes along with that article, an essay you and I and Chris Morford were all working on
Yeah,
earlier
exactly.
last year.
That's
Uh,
right.
yeah. So I'm looking at a couple of the Facebook user. I can't see your name, but they're commenting here, Chris. One says they want the Cliff Notes version in terms of, which is very true. That's a good observation. Um, Another person has observed that it's probably about how much revenue they can get out of it. Well, yeah, I think that
Yeah, it's a business. I mean, it is. I
it's a
mean,
business. It's a business,
what
and
people want
they
to
have
see.
exactly, and they
Right.
really don't want to alienate any parts of their viewership or anything like that for sure. So
Yeah.
Tom Burns, I'm going to put this one up here on the screen because it's Typical Tom, like trying to explain E equals MC squared in 25 words or less.
Yeah, that's basically
Yeah,
what it
Tom, for
is.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult to, you wish that you could stay there for a while and just chit chat with the guys, or I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, for
But
sure. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we do talk to them like on Facebook and stuff, but or emails, stuff like that. But
Right.
it's, you would like to really sit down and talk to them about, like, take a look at this. What do you think of this? And
Yeah. Yeah. Just to
that
kind
kind
of
of
give them,
thing.
like a big picture saying,
Yeah.
here's everything. Yeah, for sure. Another Facebook user wants to know, you're going to like this one, Chris. Does Hermes play a role in your research?
Hermes, well, I mean, yeah, Hermes was actually attached to the Rosicrucians, I believe, right, Jake? All
Hermes
that
Trismegistus. Yeah.
esoteric
Right.
stuff.
Thrice great Hermes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, definitely. Hermes was Mercury too, associated with
Hmm.
Mercury, I believe, too. So, yeah, Mercury, and it's hard to say. There's so much entangled, Jake. I mean, you've looked at all this stuff too. There's so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
rabbit holes to go down exactly what they're trying to say. And we've been
What,
talking
what,
about the M hand signal. All of us have.
oh, gosh. Yeah. We all have.
But I mean, we're still trying to figure that out. It's like, what the heck? It's like we
Well,
all have
it's like every time we get a new piece of the puzzle, like the in my book, I talk about the M hand signal because there's a specific ciphertext from the plaque on Shakespeare's
Mhm.
funerary monument that explicitly states that they use that hand sign as a symbol to honor bees.
Yeah. Well,
So apparently
okay.
it's supposed to look like a bee flying,
Yeah.
and so and then again it harkens back to the symbolism of bees and the beehive, with Freemasonry and the Rosicrucian movement as well. It has to do with the fact that the word bee actually, when you add it up in symbol cipher, equals 12, which is
Mhm.
the number of the letter M in symbol cipher.
Yeah.
It's all interrelated. And so, when we, are doing all of this research and start sharing all of this information, what ends up happening is all of a sudden, like you said, it just opens up for every question we answer. It raises 12 more questions. It seems like.
Yeah. It's endless. It's
Yeah.
it's nothing that one person can do alone, really. I mean, you need a whole team, and a lot of that is, it's nice that we have that with our group, and just to throw things out there and discuss things. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. The faceless um, Facebook user. Uh, once our good buddy Daniel, what an amazing researcher in and of himself.
Oh yes, Daniel.
Hermes is the god of thieves, he says. Yeah, for sure, Daniel. And so again, you have all of these different, like you said, entanglements. That's a great way of putting it, Chris, for
Mhm.
sure. Um, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, I mean, you've done multiple presentations, but in one of them, you actually pointed to the southeast corner of the swamp
Yes, and that
where
was
they
actually,
found the road. Oh, okay.
I
So,
know,
I mean,
yeah,
you pinpointed that spot years ago. Okay,
yes.
and so what led you to pinpointing that spot as an important area of research in the swamp?
Well, the constellation Virgo is kind of shaped like the body of Virgo is kind of shaped like a V. So, and it just happens when it sets in the west. It sets due west, right at 270. But the main star, Spica, which is a famous star, and it's a sheath of wheat in her hand, actually, represents Spica. But it has a long history, even in Egyptian times and all the way back, that it sets right on that corner as it sets up the island. So it sets at that corner, and that corner is also very important because it's actually the closest point to the money pit from the swamp. So, I mean, to think that, I mean, I would think that would be the place a tunnel would be originating from.
Well, yeah. The shortest distance between two lines is, or 2 points, is a straight line.
Yeah.
So you want the
Yeah.
shortest distance for sure.
But that east side of that swamp is definitely very important. But the corner is something that I pinned out because it just, there have been rumors of flat rocks in there. It's probably the road, actually. Dan finding some flat rocks, or just like the money pit, as it was told, there was, flat rocks on top. So I would, possibly think that, it was covering something also, a shaft or something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's still a chance for
No,
a
that's
tunnel
really
there.
cool.
We'll see. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
there's still a
see.
chance.
I'm still hoping for some ground penetrating radar to locate our vault that you and I located.
Oh
But
yeah, the west
that would be.
side of the island is something that really's gotta. I'm hoping they get the chance to explore that more.
I'm hoping so too.
Yeah.
Well, especially when after we presented, they said, "Oh, you put some X's on the ground, guys. We're going to go check them out." So I'd love to hear back some feedback about what that looks like and how it
maybe it was
turns out.
so late. Maybe it was so late last year that we presented. Maybe they just didn't get a chance. They were wrapping up, and
Yeah,
so maybe they'll get
for
to
sure.
it.
Yeah, one of the other questions earlier you brought up Paul. I was wondering if you could share with the listeners and viewers, your what you've learned from him. You said that early on with your research, he was definitely a mentor. Who is he? What's his background? Judy wants to know. Okay, I'm going to put this up on screen. It's pretty funny. Okay, give guys vault. Sorry, Judy.
No,
maybe for another time.
No,
that's just a teaser for you. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
We'd love to get into it for sure, but we can't. But if you could, share your experiences of Paul and what he meant to you and what you learned from him, and some of the stories that he shared with you, because they kind of fed into some of the work that what happened with my theory on the island.
Well, Paul was kind of a man of mystery. He really was. He had a very interesting military background. I think he was an electrical engineer in a sub for Canada.
Oh, cool.
But he was brilliant, actually. He was very brilliant. He could, store information in his brain from like everything he learns. Like he could go back 10 years and remember as much research as he's done. And he was like,
wow.
He had endless energy when he'd go and do research. He would spend, a full day at this place called Pans in Nova Scotia. And even in like 2005, they still used card catalogs. They didn't have computers.
Wow. Cool.
He would have to look through unorganized card catalogs to find stuff about Oak Island. And he did that, and he debunked the three boys theory. He figured out that there was actually people on the island, and 1780s, and he kind of debunked that 1795 theory. So that was his big thing, and he wanted to really do the historical backgrounds of the families and the lots. And I think Daniel is doing a lot of that too. But I think Daniel is actually using some of Paul's research for that. But I would work with Paul on finding the family Bibles of these people, like the Melvins, the Smiths, all the major players like Anthony Graves. Samuel Ball is very obscure and very hard to find, but I think Paul found a few things on him too. But like the McGinnis family, how did they get there? Where did they go? Ball was attached to McGinnis. They walked from Sherbrooke down to the area and did had a lumber business on the island. So they were cutting down trees. So, but Vaughn and McGinnis and Ball were all knew each other, and it's the history of Chester, definitely during the Revolutionary War. Is very interesting time. But Paul,
well, wasn't there a lot of intrigue there in Chester about spies and back and forth?
They're all transplanted New Englanders, really.
Yeah.
Prescott's, I think, either cousin or uncle or nephew, I don't know. But the Prescott rode in the Midnight Run with Paul Revere. That was a relative of him, and he was at Chester.
Wow.
It wasn't like they were loyalists. They were American rebels living in Chester.
Well, my research showed that Nova Scotia was supposed to be the 13th colony.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Washington had spies there. But Washington didn't want it. I don't know. He decided not to take it for some reason. I don't know.
I would imagine he felt it would have overextended what they had,
spread them out too thin. Yeah, it would have been hard to keep.
It would have been hard to keep. I mean, it would have been a wonderful strategic location, which I think was its whole purpose.
Yeah.
As far as, entry into the Americas from England, for sure. So,
there was definitely friends in Nova Scotia, friends of the Americans in Nova Scotia. And then, that brings to light the use of the island for smuggling and privateering. Privateers would drop off their stuff and store it there. And then they would smuggle it back into the United States. So,
my take on Samuel Ball was always that, he was a rum runner, that was a part and parcel of what he was doing there. But,
molasses was a hot commodity. So, I don't know.
For sure. Well, cool. So I guess one of the things that I wanted to also ask, I mean, one of the things that I don't think that people realize is that, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm gonna, because you're my friend, I feel like I can get away with it. When we consider like Oak Island theorists, I mean, you seem to be a nexus for a lot of the theorists who now are coming to the fore and, are being really prominent on the show. You brought in Chris Morford. You worked with both he and Corian. You initially were brought in to work with Aaron Helton. You sucked me into the vortex. So, I mean, when you think about that, how do you kind of, I'm beating on my microphone here. When you think about that, and I know that you were probably also, I mean, you're already sharing information with other up and coming theorists, people who are posting some really cool stuff on your Facebook group and other groups. I mean, do you kind of see yourself as in that role of someone kind of like what Paul was with you? This idea of bringing people on board, saying, "Hey, listen, the more minds we apply to this, the more likely we are to solve it." Is that kind of what you're doing? Or how you view it? Yeah,
it is, and it really comes to the realization that it's impossible for one person to do it. It's not. You need a team, and I'm always trying to recruit people that I have the interest and knowledge, have good ideas. They're passionate about it, and like Daniel. I mean, Daniel's a perfect example. You gotta grab him and pull him into this. All the stuff that he does. But there's also like Jason. Jason Mercer. All these guys have great ideas, and I mean, some of the stuff I have to think about a little bit, but but it's going to be like, it's going to take a bunch of us really to overlapping. We always look for that overlapping research that has with everybody's theories that that might connect, and that's what
that's one of the things that you and I've been Yeah, that's what Rick wants, and that's one of the things that you and I have said all along is that when
Yeah,
we look at our points that overlap, I mean, you and I have a handful of actual X's on the map that actually coincide with each other,
they
you know,
do.
and then I think that's kind of that's what we really need. Michael Heron again. Washington collected the treasure to fund the war for independence. Yeah, Michael, that's one of the things that I think that a lot of us have said all along. That's one of the big things that we kind of think that there was a war chest there built up and kind of left behind for when the time was right, for sure.
And just to add to that, if anybody wants to look this up or maybe is familiar with it already, but it's the sacking of Lunenburg, which is just south of Oak Island, down the road a little ways. It's a
Mhm.
fishing community, but it was a fishing community even back in the Revolutionary War. It's very old, and
Mhm.
that was the American privateers were sent up, 6 of them, and they were told to hit Lunenburg and Chester. But I think it was a lot of people are very suspect of that because they they all went and had dinner with Prescott and Chester. You know what I mean? They had dinner together, and like
Right, right.
while they had this staged fight where they're shooting cannonballs over the village, and they're shooting guns in the air to make it look like it was real, and nobody ever
Right.
got hurt or anything. And
Yeah.
but they put on a show for the loyalists that were still around, and yeah, so like 3 ships were in the bay, and then 3 ships were over at the island doing something. You know what I mean? And then
Sure,
they
sure.
they staged something at Lunenburg where they sacked the town, and I think they kidnapped the mayor, stuff like that. But they brought him back after. It's not, it wasn't anything. Nobody ever got hurt, and
Right.
but that stuff like that is very interesting part because where they put picking up the war chest then it was 1782, right at the end of the war. So it makes sense.
It really does. It really does. Um, yeah, and once again, another nugget from Daniel. It was for show. They transferred something. Yeah, Daniel, that's exactly what Chris is
Yeah,
saying.
that's what I think.
Um, yeah, I think so too, for sure, 100%. Um, before I ask my last couple of questions here, I want to open it up to the viewers that are watching us live here. Some people are watching us on Facebook, others are watching us on YouTube. Um, does anyone have any questions here for Chris?
I know who that is.
Yeah, we know who this is. It doesn't show your name. It doesn't show your name, John, but we know it's you. Thanks for joining in, man. Too funny. Uh, any questions for Chris? Well, if you do, just make sure you throw them up there in one of the chats, and we'll throw it up here on the screen for Chris. So one of the things that, and you and I have had this conversation in private, and we haven't really shared it publicly in terms of the more all of the time that we've spent and put in on our theories and in writing up the proposals and our theories and sending them in. And there's a certain level of frustration associated with that too,
Yeah,
there really is, and that's the other side that I don't think people really know or appreciate necessarily, is that you send information and you don't necessarily hear anything back, but then you keep on refining your theory, you keep and sending it in. You and I both have gone through this process multiple times, and as have all of the other theorists. But at the end of the day, my big question for you, I know the answer for me, but and I probably know the answer for you too, but I think people want to hear it. Is what keeps you doing it? Why do you keep spending time and effort and refining your information, and you keep sending it into we send it into Doug and Rick, and the rest of the guys. What keeps you doing it?
part of it is just helping the guys find something. That's what I want them to find something. And the harder I work and the more research I do, I think it helps them down the road, find something significant with a story behind it.
Right.
Rick wants that story, and he wants
Yeah.
that background. Like, well, you've got a spot here. Well, why is it something there? What's the story? I go, well, here we go. And it's like, Francis Bacon, and he's like, okay, right. I mean, they just don't want a spot. They want the story to go with it. They want, Rick does anyway. He wants to hear the story. So yeah.
Well, yeah,
so I mean, Rick is one of those people that he gets along with everybody, but he's so nice and he's so you can't help. You can't help not just bending over backwards for the guy, really. I mean, doing whatever you want, asks you to do, and just trying to help him out, because he does that for all the, everybody else. So it's kind of hard not to return that to him. But, and the second thing is it does give you a rush when you find something that no one else has found. You know that feeling, Jake? Like,
oh, I think I do.
It's that rush of like, the latest research with Nolan's Cross. It's like, whoa, no one's ever found this. Like, no one's ever attached this with Nolan's Cross. And it's like, wow, and just that feeling of finding something new. And, that always
something
like a drug, really. It is.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and that's obviously what I experienced with what turned into a book. It started out with you saying, "Hey, listen, Chris Morford of Shakespeare's Funerary Monument. Maybe you ought to give it a look." And it's now turned into a book. A year later. So
yeah,
and along with Oh man, yeah. Again, it's like it's like you said, that
came out of COVID. There's one positive thing that came out of COVID. I mean, that's what you did,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's how I spent my time. And what it was funny because you guys were finding such cool, interesting connections on it. And, it goes along with Peter Amundsen's discoveries, the Pentagon and pentagram, the Bacon pentagram. And, when I looked at it, I saw, well, this has got to be a transposition cipher, and here's why. And so I'm going to try a different tactic. And then when it unraveled and I saw what was there, you talk about a rush, but holy cow. That was again, I'm still wrapping my head around that information. And even though the book is out, I'm still finding more cipher messages in it.
But the thing is, even though I might have done, using the numbers and the surface finds, you're deep in, your finds deep within the plaque, or like we're seeing the same stuff. That's
just it. That's what I was going to say next, is that, you use completely different methods than what I used, and your discoveries just echoed the messages that I found, which I mean, and then to have the messages all, kind of coincide, even amongst, the different transpositions that I used, all produce similar messages. It's like you said, it's that sort of rush that when you find something you don't think anyone's ever seen before. So Daniel posted, I'm noticing that a bunch of people who have been involved with the island were also involved in the mint of their country, which indicates money and possibly counterfeiting. Kind of like the messages you and I shared earlier today, Daniel. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Chris? The idea that a lot of the characters involved here with Oak Island were actually involved in minting and printing money.
Well, I mean, the only people that I know of, I don't know, I think they might have had something to do with the island, but Sir Isaac Newton was given the job of controlling the mint at the end of the 1600s, and he recruited Edmund Halley to
Hmm.
help him. He was in the Chester Mint, in fact. So one of my presentations, I think I try to relate the name of the town of Chester, which is right there, and possibly hinting that had a relation with the Chester in England, and
Hmm.
with the mint there. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting. Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting that the mint in England. I think, if I'm not correct, but I think it was Newton or Haley that designed the new coin to stop the counterfeiting. Was actually they had the ridges around the outside, so
Right.
they it stopped that counterfeiting.
Which indicates that there was a problem with counterfeiting at the time.
Yes.
One of the messages I just shared with Daniel this morning, and I haven't had a chance to share with you. I was able to tie it out this morning, and it goes along with the same exact ciphertext that I presented to the War Room, Key 38. And
Mhm.
this is a totally different reading of it, but it explicitly states that that piracy basically afforded a good cover for a counterfeiting operation using
Mhm.
pyrite. It
Oh,
actually uses the word pyrite, and
wow.
coining and stamping and counterfeiting are the words used.
The island's got a
So
lot of that.
yeah, so again, it all kind of fits in together. A lot of our information, is again, once again, coinciding. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it's funny. The big question I really wanted to get to tonight is, what kind of drives the Oak Island theorists and researchers, and that was the answer I was obviously expecting, is that we're all looking for the same thing, which is the truth.
Yeah.
For guys like you and me, I mean, that's our form of treasure. you know um it's not actually being on the show on the History Channel and being on screen. It's sharing information with these guys that we, even though we've only seen them on TV or talked to once or twice, we kind of feel like we know them, and we're like, I like that guy. And I
Mhm.
think I found this truth, and I really want to share it, so that other people will know what really happened here. And you talked about how Rick, you know, wants the story. Uh, the big thing that appeals to me is Marty when he says, "Connect the dots." I want all of the dots connected. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's
Uh,
hard.
how yeah, it is, and it's like, how is that? Yeah, Judy, she says the truth and journey is the treasure. Absolutely, 100%. And again, I don't we don't need to explain it to Judy. I mean, she's uh,
Mhm.
a true fan, and she really understands the whole purpose of what it is everyone does. Um, so, we can go ahead and wrap things up here. And again, if anyone has any questions for Chris, go ahead and throw them up in the chat. But and like I was saying, for both of us, I think that the idea is that pursuing that truth and being able, for me, being able to connect the dots. Particularly my latest proposal where I was able to actually connect the plaque to New France, and what that connection really is.
Mhm.
For me, that was like you had said, it's that rush when all of a sudden you discover something that
Yeah,
you don't think anyone else has ever seen before. It's really pretty cool.
yeah,
Um,
and it is about the truth. It is about, I mean, it's about changing history too. It's like no one's figured out. And Jake, I've asked you this, like, why us? Why are we finding all this stuff on Shakespeare? There's all these you
well,
know scholars that.
that have been studying the same thing, but the thing I think the reason it was us, Chris, it was simply because when it comes to, okay, so I find an explicit ciphertext that says, "Hi, I'm Francis Bacon, and I wrote the works of Shakespeare." For all intents and purposes, that's what it says,
Yeah.
amongst many other messages, including who his parents are. why, and you said, why us? Why are we figuring this out? I think it's because we take our time and focus our attention on the problem.
Yeah.
And most people don't do that. And at the end of the day, I think that's what it's really all about is, we have a desire for that truth. We want to find, a piece of the puzzle for the guys on the island, and we focus our attention and we start finding puzzle pieces, really, that's really what it is.
That's true.
So one Facebook user made a lot of great friends with the same drive about Oak Island. Yeah, 100%. All of the researchers, we're and theorists, we try to share information with each other, share jokes, and it's fun, for sure. Tom wants to say thanks. Appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts and experience, Chris.
Well, thanks for coming in, Tom. You always have a lot of great insights in these podcasts, and even on John's on Saturdays or Tuesdays. No, we appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, for sure. You're one of our favorites. You always ask really great questions. And so, yes, another Facebook user, the truth always shines through. Well, we hope so. It's John Stemmer. Okay. Thanks, John. That, and you're one of those friends that we've made, and, like I said, we appreciate all of the work that you do at Quest of Oak Island for sure. We tune in every week, and, you have avid followers in us. A lot of guys are thanking us. Judy's thanking us as well. You're very welcome, guys. Glad you enjoyed it. It's my maiden voyage of my podcast. I'm planning on doing this twice a month. It's not something I can keep up every week. I know that about myself. I get distracted by shiny objects. My sister Dawn, thank you, gentlemen. That she's saying that tongue in cheek because she knows me too well, and for her to call me a gentleman is actually a joke. So thanks, Dawn. I love you. Appreciate you very much. Any final thoughts, Chris, before we sign off here?
No, I just hope for another season. I know there's a delay at the island, and the government's giving them a little bit of trouble, but hopefully they'll be there and get going, and we'll have another season. Another season of Oak Island starting in November. Yeah,
Jack just messaged me and said that they're in a 2-week
the 2-week quarantine.
2-week quarantine, and they
shut down Nova Scotia pretty much.
Pretty much. So they're not really doing anything. So, Tom, appreciate that. And like I said, we're hoping that we can get out there and visit you guys, and hopefully get out to the island sometime soon.
Yeah,
Chris, I want to say thanks a lot, man. It means a lot to me that you were my first guest. First of all, second of all, I want the world to know that the role that you've played in the show, even though a lot of it was behind the scenes. You have sort of like this. I guess you're kind of like a legacy. You're the connection to the old school theorists in a sense, because you came in so early, and you were able to pick their brains early on. I mean, you were mowing the area around the money pit, for God's sake.
I know
people don't know that about you, but now they do. I hope the people that the people who are actually here watching live now know it, and I'm hoping that viewers that watch this later on will all of a sudden realize that and say, "Oh wow, that guy, he has street credit. He's legit." So,
hey, one other person I'd like to mention is David Wood too. I mean, he's an he was there right from the beginning too, and he's still around. He's from New Zealand, so it's kind of like the time is a little quite different for him over here. But yeah, Dave Wood is super knowledgeable too. So anytime you get a chance to pick his brain, definitely do it.
Oh yeah, maybe a future podcast. Who knows? If we could, I don't know. Time it right on the other side of the world. Not sure. All right, Chris. All right, man.
Thanks. I had a great time.
I did too. And once again, like I said, the more that people can know, the better. And again, I appreciate you doing this for me. And Knowing us, I'll be chatting with you tomorrow.
More than likely.
More likely. All right, man. Thanks. Hey, everyone who came, appreciate you joining us. And we'll see you next time, probably in 2 more weeks, and we'll do another Ghosts of Bacon podcast. Thanks, Chris. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Night all.